Kyiv School. The curators will tell us about the details of Kyiv Biennale 2015. Georg Schöllhammer will talk to us, coordinator of the Kyiv School. Also Hedwig Saxenhuber, coordinator of Kyiv School. Lesya Prokopenko, who is an independent coordinator. And Vasyl Cherepanyn, head of the Visual Culture Research Center. The briefing will be conducted in English in part, so if you need a device for translation, then you can get it in the rear of the audience. The floor is yours, colleagues.
Welcome all to our press conference. This is our second one. The first press conference we had in early December 2013, when we was appointed as curators for the second Kyiv Biennale from the Arsenale. Since then, a lot of things have happened. You know it more better than me. And the situation changed a lot. When we were appointed, we had really money, yeah? And the money was gone very early. In early January, we know that we had no money. And so we made a concept to bring money from outside, to make a concept, to develop something with our partner institutions, with our network, with civil society associations, to make the biennial happen. We wanted to make a new format for the biennial, because we know at that situation we have really to react. We have to response and find an adequate format for this new situation. We thought sometimes, is it really adequate to make a biennial? But from our understanding, what art is for us, it's a questioning, it's a reflection about the situation. We think it's really an adequate instrument for today and for communication. And when we got the withdrawal 4 weeks, and at Friday 4 weeks around the same time, we had an international meeting in Vienna. Our young colleague from Italy, she was here, and we made the last selection for the international artists. We get the withdrawal from the Arsenale. We thought we can't really withdraw, because we had 100 partners, we had communication with them, we had really negotiation with them, we had a lot of other partners involved. So we thought we will continue. And after this, addressing this continuation, we got really a lot of solidarity from the international institutions. And, the legal body, the Visual Cultural Research Center, which is involved here, they were both Oleksiy Radinsky and Vasyl, they were both involved in the concept to develop some schools. So they were really, not they forced us, they offered us to continue, and we did it because we found a lot of energy here. Now I want to hand over to Georg and to explain a little bit our concept.
Well, it was really astonishing, I have to say, how civil society immediately moved in after the Arsenal had withdrawn from doing the biennial for reasons they have published and we can understand and have to respect. I really would like to say that the Arsenal is an important art space. Everybody should go in there. And I invite actually all the artists, the young artists, to work with them. They had the reason, as I said, for withdrawal, but the solidarity that we got was enormous. It was enormous, I think, because of civil society here that is so trapped in an era of warfare, in a time of warfare, in a time of, impoverishing, in a time of displacement of a lot of people, in a time of when the country is really undergoing substantial change through the aggression and the fraud of international law that has been taking place in the north of the country through the annexation, after the annexation of Crimea. The idea to do this biennial seems to open a different horizon of possible communication in a place of, say to say, a bipolar closure of a lot of debates in the country. So that's what somehow our concept reflects on, and reflected on from the beginning. It was not a concept to bring in something like art, glamorous art, that would create a kind of a Western, so to say, museums air. But it was our concept to let the art talk in combination and at the place of civil society. So we invented, and that was already done for the Arsenal. We invented something like a double strategy for this biennial, inviting around 60, 70 international artists that are prominent artists. Some of them are representing their countries at this year's biennial. Some of them got huge international prizes like the Turner Prize. So it is not an unknown crowd that followed us, and after the cancellation of the Arsenal immediately responded, yes, now we have to try to find other things, how we can react. We have to maybe readjust our projects. We have to fundraise again with different sources. But there is a solidarity with you for sure. So we will have an exhibition, but this exhibition will be embedded in 6 schools, as we call them, schools that are attended by local and international high-profile theoreticians, sociologists, cultural workers, curators, people that somehow are working in the cultural field around the notion of imagining another future. It's from Tim Schneider, the famous American historian, to Timothy Golden-Ash, to Ivan Krastev, to the IVM in Vienna with the whole collective. It is a branch of people that are circulating in the schools and are invited to talk with, to work with, to debate, to actually develop projects, even art projects, in around certain thematic frames. The thematic frames we thought about would be appropriate had to do with, on the one hand, the currents of the Ukrainian situation, on the other hand, with the wider idea of what Ukraine has contributed to international thinking and culture in the last 150 years, and how it constituted its idea of a territorial state that can name itself a nation. So we have a School of Europe. I think that's very necessary. A School of Europe, because of Europe, has been tackled by this crisis. Europe is something that sees itself suddenly under a geopolitical threat that is totally different from that we had like 2 or 3 years ago. And I think Europe can learn a lot from that what is happening here. So our School of Europe is trying to really debate a possible future of the European project in this situation. And we invited university people and artists and students from all around Europe to join in and to work with students, university people, artists and intellectuals from the Ukraine. We have another school, for instance, which is called the School of the
Є інша школа переміщених людей. Як вже і тут багато переміщення. Люди змушені переїжджати, вони змусили виїхати, з рівному втратили майно, багато міграції, йде в Україну. Україна частково, як і економіка, страждає від цієї уродливої війни на сході країни. Ми запросили художників, які мають міжнародне визнання для того, щоб працювати, а також мали частково також біографію, якраз які походять з тих, які змушені були змушені переселенці, які мігрували або змушені були в конфліктах, які можна прийняти з українським конфліктом. Ці художники будуть працювати з людьми над концепцією, навіть частковою, щоб
Just have schools that actually point on trauma. We have schools that point on self-empowering, on the history of the Ukraine as it is. We have a school of landscape, for instance. I mean, landscape is one of the metaphors when it comes to construct something like a common in this country that has so many different, so to say, had so many different geographies and territorial shifts to face in the last 150 years. But landscape was something like the metaphor for being in this country. And it was not just the metaphor for being in this country, but it was as well the place where a lot of suffering happened. And it was the place, it is the place, the Ukrainian land, that has been amidst, so to say, a triangle of geopolitical influences that it always had to tackle with, from the Ottoman in the south, from the Russian in the north and east, and from, so to say, the west, that what we would call Western Europe, in the west. This school of landscape will work around these metaphors and do that with the intervention of poets, of painters, and of intellectuals as well. We have another school which seems to be very important. I mean, if you look into the debates on contemporary art, there is a new interest in realism. And realism is the constructing figure of Ukrainian art, though one tends to think that it is abstract art like Malevich, but it is still, still always been realism. So we're having a school of realism that matches with this interest of the international art crowd, but it is a school of realism where realism as well stands for a metaphor. One has to be realist in this period. We have another school where we bring in people that had the same experiences that the people had to face after the civil upstand for a better society, a democratic one, a European one on Maidan, was trapped by the intervention that took place. So we invited people that had the same experiences of, well, euphoria and disillusion, and cannot really get hold of the rests of emotion that are on there. We are working there with artists from Turkey, from Gezi Park. We are working with artists from Tahrir. We are working with artists that have been engaged in similar projects in the 70s and 80s in Argentina. So this will be another, and we are working around small dramatic pieces, poetic concepts, small films that then will be part of the exhibition. So these schools somehow are in the core of it, and they will work for all the people of Ukraine. It's not just that there are classrooms somewhere in a side program, but they are in the center of the exhibitions. The exhibition, though, cannot longer be in just one place, and we will later announce that it is just a miracle how many international places have been joining in, and national places, to substitute the loss of the big building that we had planned the biennial for. And we have our partners, as Hedwig already had said, in 12 or 13 European cities, from Sofia to Bucharest, to Budapest, to Bratislava, to Vienna, to Leipzig and Karlsruhe, the old and the new Germany, to even up to Norway, to Trondheim, and to the west, to Brussels, where we have an offer, and even maybe with a very dangerous but very challenging project, that there are some people in Moscow that really see Ukraine different from Russian media, that we want to invite to show that in Moscow as well. And there is courageous people still who do that, which I can very much applaud, I have to say. Because of it, we think as channels of communications are the utmost important, and art can create that third space where, without the everyday of political or economical or social struggle, one can create that horizon for the future, and there will be a future, there must be a future, and processes like reconciliation must start, and we try to offer a place for that. And on the other hand, art is a place that is showing all the complexity, sometimes ununderstandable, sometimes just offering objects that have to be read with some, well, intellectual efforts, I would say. We will not charge people who come in, so it's free for everybody. We will not ticket the exhibition. And we are very, very happy that immediately after we decided this project must go on because of it is important, and we said we are dedicated really to do it as a sign of don't just stop if somebody says it's stopped, but go on imagining your possible futures here in Ukraine. And it was so actually touching, I have to say, that you immediately, Vasyl, stepped in and helped us with organizing all that what has been coming to us. The biennial will take place. It will take place in the same structure in terms of concept and in terms of participants. We do have to downgrade a bit and rearrange because of, well, the big space is gone and the economic crisis is very, very visible here. Vasyl, would you take over?
Добрий день.
Hello, dear colleagues. Thank you for your attention, for coming here. I'll speak in Ukrainian in order to underline our perspective. And first of all, on behalf of the Center for Visual Culture, I'll thank our Austrian colleagues for their bravery and their preparedness in spite of all the complicated circumstances to go on with the project, as we as an institution have almost from the very start of our existence since 2008 have a huge experience of cooperation with these curators within different projects, and in the context of Kyiv Bienale we were involved, in fact, from the very beginning. At the stage of preparing the project, also on the stage of writing a concept and involvement of different schools. So from our side, continuing the line outlined by our Austrian colleagues, I'd like to depict our motivation and our intentions, why we think that Biennale is important to be held and why is it important to hold it in Kyiv. First of all, talking about the military and political context in which we all live, we think it is very important that Biennale will be held during such very specific circumstances after the Ukrainian revolution has happened and during the military aggression against the Ukrainian territory, and that's why we think these circumstances sharpen even more the need for such a public platform on which with intellectual and artistic means the Ukrainian society could respond to the challenges that Ukraine faces now, as we are more than convinced that art does have a political potential. Regrettably, it is not yet displayed full scale in the Ukrainian society, but Biennale is a good opportunity for the active part of the civil society to display it and ask relevant questions. So we think that Biennale should be held as it is needed by the Ukrainian society. You know, this is not a blockbuster or some glamorous project. This is an open, engaged project that provides an opportunity, in spite of all the antagonisms into which we are involved that define us. We have to think them over and open some space for the future. Secondly, as an institution, we, the Center of the Visual Culture, think it is very important that Biennale is a sort of a continuation of the idea of Maidan, and I would say that Kyiv Biennale is a international artistic Maidan, and it is not less important than arms or weapons, and it should be used. The Center of Visual Culture was institutionally present on Maidan, involved in the Open University of Maidan. So after the revolution, it is very important for us. So those emancipatory, liberatory, and other practices that were created on Maidan or emerged because of Maidan could be continued. So we need a certain means, a certain channel that would help them institutionalize and be embedded into the Ukrainian society in order to move forward the further social change, because it is these gains that the Russian military aggression tries to make nil and void. And this is the gain that we just don't have the right to lose. From the international point of view, we think it is very important to hold the Biennale, as this is a question of the discourse of Ukraine on the international stage. This is the issue of Ukraine in spite of its military urgency for the international situation. It is still an untold story. There's a lot of lies and propaganda in the representation of Ukraine, and Biennale provides us with a possibility, with an opportunity to create our own narrative and to gain a certain representation, and that this representation is accepted at the international level. So Biennale is a framework which provides us with an opportunity to talk about local Ukrainian problems in an international language. So the creation of this language, of this discourse, is one of the aims of holding this Biennale. Another important aspect for, I would say, purely artistic context is interesting in that it has a very experimental nature. Probably for the first time on the post-Soviet space, we have an experience of holding such a large-scale event on very different foundations, as the format and the concept outlined by our Austrian colleagues is based to a great extent on grassroots level initiative, on the involvement of a huge number of international institutions and teams and individuals. Biennale in itself is an open format which belongs to the society. So in this case, we fill it in with a somewhat unusual contents. So that's why it is a school, Kyiv School, not a market entertainment, but a combination of international and local institutions which provides us all with an opportunity to learn together what we in fact could not do earlier. Kyiv School, of course, is named so with a reference to a very important Ukrainian artistic experience of the 20th century, which is underrepresented on the international scene, but also with a reference to the fact that maybe the cultural field will be an arena which will be adequately representative the unique political experience of Ukraine, and maybe it has a lot of such characteristics that could define the attention of all European context and provide them with the opportunity to learn. So it is not only us who are learning from outside world, but maybe the outside world and Europe have to learn something from Ukraine. And this is one of the goals of Biennale. And to sum up my speech before I give the floor to Lesya Prokopenko, for the local context, for the Ukrainian context, it is not only important for us to hold an event, but to see that as a result of this holding, there are some places of thinking, of becoming aware that will be left there for the future. This is not a one-time action, one-time event. This is a event with a prolongation, which will lead to the opening of such a space in the future, which, you know, taking into account all political and military aspects, we will be able to overcome them because such a place with space will be created. Thank you very much. See you at Biennale.
Good afternoon. I'll make a small summary of what Vasyl told. I will try to analyze partners and institutions with which we started to work. And I can tell you, these attractive theories that were described by the previous speaker are not utopia. It's absolute. They are able to live under conditions of under modern conditions in Ukraine, and we understand to which extent, to how there are different efforts how to instrumentalize cultural projects, how to bring politics into culture, and those efforts are something which we cannot escape to predict. Stop. We speak about an inclusive project. How with different methods, efforts, questions, and formulation of questions, how new communities are built, and instead of to build in a new hierarchies and new power relations, as that can happen. And it's a great pleasure that during the last several weeks, when we started to work independently over the project, it was a great pleasure to understand to which extent how productive responses of cultural community of Kyiv and international community that for a year and a half was supporting the project, was around the project. The work with the institutions in Ukraine opens new prospects, and we involve such partners as National Art Museum, National History Museum, and National Academy of Art and Architecture was productive. We have not expected that. A productive partner in our efforts to understand new horizons of work with practices of culture. That's why They joined us, the National Academy of Art joined us, and the Society of Artists of Ukraine, and we'll work with them on projects of the School of Landscape and Realism. In addition to that, it's a pleasure to mention there is an institute of art issues, contemporary art issues, and many other institutions with which we have active negotiations. And of course, for us for that to be a real project, an open project, and to legitimize and to demonstrate how it is possible to work with the Ukrainian society, we started to work with state institutions, public institutions. External support Biennale received until now, it's very strong, and of course it is supported by European institutions, institutions in the Asia. I will read you a list. These are the partners we're working with, and not during the last 3 weeks, but the last 3 years, and some institutions are involved during the time when we changed the format. Kyiv Biennale was supported by Federal Chancellor's Office of Austria and Embassy of Austria in Kyiv, Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Germany, the Council on International Relations of Germany, and State Agency on Modern Art of Norway, Culture Foundation Alliance, Esten Stiftung and European Cultural Foundation, British Council, Academy of Old Ark and Kern, and Katrina Djogot, who's working there, State Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw, and the Museum of Art in Trondheim, local School of Modern Art in Krasnoye, University of Art in Berlin, University in Leipzig, Whitehall Museum, Gallery in Zagreb, Tomislav Goto Institute in Zagreb, and the European Humanitarian Institute in Vilnius. Also, a lot of institutions from our region and countries that have joint experience, common experience with Ukraine, like Air Tbilisi and the School of Art Criticism and Curator Studies in Yerevan. In addition to that, recently, Institute of Red House from Sofia joined us, and Athens Biennale decided to provide the support, and independent project together with the Visual Institute received awards with the European Foundation. Asia Art Archives from Congo, Asia Art Foundation Almaty, Polish Institute. In addition to that, we received quite a big support, symbolic support, from International Committee of Museum and Collections of Modern Art, SIMAM, which belongs to ICOM, from Institute of Humanitarian Science, IBM, Network of Culture Initiatives and Transit. That's those institutions in Austria, Romania, Slovakia, and Network of Culture Institutions Critical Виробництва. Also, we work with the network International Cities of Refugee Networks, Social Cultures and Temple House, and European Network of Debate Clubs at Time to Talk. And this is the list which is growing, and on absolutely equal conditions we are trying to develop new projects and to enlarge our team. In general, I can say several words about team of Biennale, because Georg and Hedwig, they have experience of communication with culture circles in Europe and in Kyiv. And as Vasyl mentioned, they worked together in some projects and with a visual culture center. And together with Hedwig Saxenhuber, I curated this exhibition Livelihood and the attention to social political events in Ukraine was very accurate and strong all this time. The team they develop, they create on Biennale. Those are people who believe in the project and they are passionate about the project. And I hope that we'll enlarge this network and together we will have a project which will be a long-term project for Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful week this week in Kyiv because we met the representatives of a lot of cultural institutes here. And most of them immediately said, yes, we go with you. We have maybe already spent our budgets, but we will support you for sure because we as well think, and it has not been just the Cultural Institute, the Modern Research Institute, for instance, which is a good venue here, said, well, it is needed to create this platform. The Institut Français tries to do something, the British Council tries to do something, the Swiss Embassy tries to do something. The Czech Institute will support. We always had the friendly support of the Goethe Institute here. We have the support of the Italian Cultural Institute. We have the support of the Croatian Cultural Institute. We have the support of the South African Embassy. And we are having meetings from this press conference on. And just outside I met two people who opened a new art space here and said, well, let's cooperate, it's so important. I think, I thank you all for this. I know how budgets are made in this time and it's very late in budgeting, but it's really almost heartbreaking how this project now is taken over by civil society and their representatives of, well, Europe in Kyiv and the Ukraine, and which underlines that Kyiv is one of the great capitals of European thinking, which we want to transmit to the European European public with our departments in Europe and with this project. Thank you so much.
Дуже дякуємо, Георг, за такі теплі слова. Будемо сподіватися, що бієнале такі.
Thank you very much for such nice words. And I have a question to Ukrainians. Do you know dates?
Готуєтеся в організації проєкту.
Yeah, we will open on and we will run till the early weeks of November. So it is quite a long period of time. You know, in November it's getting cold. We have to close some venues and we want to close them together. But
It's getting cold, so we close. Окей, дякую. Наступне запитання. Не забувайте представляти.
Thank you. Next question. Please introduce yourself.
About your European chapters and why you're having branches across Europe.
It was really for pragmatic reasons at first, but afterwards we brought them in. We thought it's a good chapter of our concept, and then we really collected to have more in. Yeah. But at first it was for bringing money in.
no, that's not fully true.
It was the first. For me, it was my first idea. Yeah, also started in this concept. Yeah.
No, actually for me and I think for Vasyl, it was the idea to really loudly speak about that the history of this country. It's being fragmented, it's being recollected, and what it contributed to the European thinking of the last 150 years. And this will be shown in this more than 150 years. This will be shown in these departments. In Karlsruhe, for instance, we're having a show that for the first time is showing all the practices of Alexander Exter, who influenced the Bauhaus so much, yeah, and who influenced, so to say, the Joseph Gregor, by the way, as well, coming from the territory of Ukraine now, a famous theater exhibition in Vienna in the 1924, where this new theater has been collected by Gregor, another Ukrainian, well, then an Austrian, but now it's on the territory of Ukraine, and that's as well quite interesting.
I mean, I understand the historical links, but what is
Please speak to microphone.
what is actually happening?
That's what I told you, for instance, in Karlsruhe. In EVM in Vienna, we are having a series of debates because of it's one of the think tanks thinking about Eastern Europe, and they're bringing people in here. I forgot to mention one school, which is very, very important school. When we met Harun Farocki, the famous German filmmaker, last summer, he immediately, which was quite good, a friend of us, he said, well, I want to immediately go to Ukraine and I want to do something because if I see an ugly image war developing and I want to teach people how to relate to that image war. On the other hand, I see a lot of documentary material in the internet that has to be somehow edited and collected to create evidence. So unfortunately, Harun really died 2 days later, totally unexpectedly. And now in his memory, we're having the Harun Farocki Film School, and a lot of these things that will be developed there will travel, for instance, to institutions. The transit network is doing something different. They said there is always a Ukrainian, so to say, migration to the countries in Eastern Europe, and they want to involve these people and work with them, and we will come with other pieces, even exhibition pieces. Some of them run just small exhibition spaces, so we try to mirror this. Leipzig is doing quite a huge show of contemporary international art, where Ukrainian art is involved. That is following the concept of the show, and where one can really see, and this has to be said, that the young Ukrainian generation can cope with the ones from Berlin, from London, from New York. This has to be said, and this should be shown there. It's much more an art exhibition, because we don't always want to point our wounded trauma, and we don't always want to explain, but it can represent as well, and that will be happening in Leipzig. So there is a lot of different things. There is a small show in the museum in Trondheim, where very likely we will have the possibility to talk with young and critical Russian artists and Ukrainian artists and Norwegian artists and do a small show. So it's really part of the biennial. It shows, as the biennial is setups, it shows setups that follow the concept.
Just to add a couple of words concerning this international dimension and departments in other countries, I think it has two reasons to do that, at least from the Ukrainian side. First of all, it's really important from the conceptual, or I would say from the ideological point of view. Because if we are talking about the representation of Ukraine, Ukrainian narrative on the international arena, it's really important to base it, to root it on internationally. Because even ideologically, that is a level that cannot be reached by the concept of the Russian world, which is attacking Ukraine, actually. Yeah? The Ruski Mir idea, the concept of the Russian world, is very much ethnocentric. That's why it's rather on the right side of the political spectrum. And Ukrainian discourse has to be rooted internationally. It's very important for the ideological future of Ukraine. And the second aspect I would mention here is that it deals directly with the idea of the university, of the school itself. Because it's about universitas, it's about sharing, about spreading the knowledge, spreading art. That it's not about some frame which has to be which has to be done only in some inside some borders. It's about trespassing, overcoming, and especially today, I think that is our advantage that we have to use. Yeah.
Дякую. Наступне запитання, будь ласка.
Next question, please.
For Talia. This concept is very impressive indeed, and so it seems that it encompasses as well an Ukrainian side and an European side. But if I understood it well, it will happen at the same time in different European countries and cities, and here in Kyiv, where I think that if there is no one place, so if the Arsenal is not available, where will it take place here? In different places in Kyiv, or in one particular place? Because you didn't mention that so far. It's really impressive, but it's good also to know what we may expect. I mean, physically, where it will be and how it will be, so to say, shown to the public. In which way?
It will be shown, for instance, in the National Gallery, in the National Historical Museum, in the Academy of Visual Arts, in the Dovzhenko Film Studios, in the School of Film, in the Modern Research Institute, I think it's 30 offers that we are having of collaboration. I mean, it will not take place, obviously, for instance, in the other big venue that is dealing with contemporary art in Kyiv, but I can say that they offered their help. I mean, in terms of building up technology, trying to contract construction companies and all these logistics, helping with legal advice. So it's even crossing these bridges. But their path is a different one, but there is a cooperation between us. So it is really trying to be integrative. And if you look at the setup of institutions, then you see that it's really integrative, because there are institutions that on that basis, I think, have never thought about working together, and that's very important for us as well.
Thank you very much. So that will be different programs in different places at the same time, and I'd say, well, to acquire more synergy as well.
Yeah.
This meeting, and it will be published in different places with leaflets and internet and Facebook and so on.
It will be advertised.
So
it will be advertised.
Kyiv will be aware of this, I hope.
Yeah. For sure, it will be advertised. It will be internationally advertised.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And next question, please. Запитання, уточнення. Якщо більше немає запитань і уточнень,
If we have I have a question to the Center of Visual Culture. This is Biennale. What are you planning to do? And are you planning to do this in 2 years again? Thank you for your question. We continue. It's a follow-up of the question which we heard before. You see, we've got used that Biennale has a clear format. Practically, from conceptual point of view, when we hold such a Biennale, like this one, we are trying to open this format, to make this format more open, not to follow conservative schemes or formats or ways like usually biennales, they organize biennales. To make sort of like a World Cup of football, like an open market for curators, for gallery people, etc. So it's a principally open format. So it will be decentralized. It will take place in different places. Everything depends on a concrete teacher, school, and concrete students. And to some extent, we think it as a performative performance. That when we hold it, we give a certain dynamic to the movement. Maybe in 2 years, I hope that will happen. The idea and the initiative group, institutional formats of this biennale, maybe some others, individual and groups will unite. Who will believe that this is a good idea? Why not to participate on their own level? So we go to a horizontal level. We don't have this vertical line, and we will try to appeal to the whole spectrum of civil society in Ukraine and abroad. That belongs to you. This is our common. We can fill it with what we want. Nobody has a copyright for this biennale. We can fill it with our own content. If, as a result, in 2 years, we will see that this is necessary, we need it, it's important, and when there is a potential in our society, we'll be happy to help them, and we'll be happy to hold the next one. Thank you. And it's important to mention that the structural components of the biennale, because it's not an integral one exhibition which looks like a demonstration of results of 5 years. All these elements have different temporal nature. Some of them can last 2 weeks, and some of them, of these schools, the components of the schools, are meant to last and to involve other people. Plus, this flexible and non-hierarchy structure which is created around organization of Biennale. As Vasyl told, it's dynamic, flexible. That's why it provides some elements could be added, some can leave. So it's quite clear that in several years, in 2 years, for example, we can again review results of this intervention, and we can study them in a new way.
Some of the schools already have potential to be implemented in the institutions, and we have talked to certain funding bodies that want to make them permanent, and that is our wish as well, so that they will work till the next biennale and then culminate. So that, I think, was your question, if it's just a biennial event or if it leaves something, so to say, to work out later, and we are working very much, even with our funders, to leave something that is going to work later.
Thank you very much, dear experts. We wish you good luck in organizing your event. Дуже дякую, шановні експерти, за презентацію. Бажаємо вам.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We wish you success in organizing a Biennale in Kyiv, and we hope to see you in September.